even. Do you know what? You don't even need an introduction. But for the purpose of this, why don't you give us a little backstory, Ellie? Why are we here today?
Oh, is this the actual podcast?
Well, we'll just go straight into it.
Why am I here today?
Yeah, do you know why?
I have no idea.
So to be clear, Ellie's been thrown in deep end here. She has no idea what's about to come.
You tell me, mate. You invited me.
How do you feel?
Yeah, good. Feeling in very good energy today. You know what? It's 2025 and it's a year of opportunity.
Yeah.
As you know, I've had a horrific 2024, but I feel that the second half was very much about rebuilding, reclaiming my power, and yeah, it sounds a bit cheesy, but it's been a process of self-discovery. And actually, 2025, as much as I'm still very much in the trenches in a lot of respects, I am feeling more empowered, more confident, and more capable than I ever have in my entire 41 years on this planet. So happy fucking new year.
Now, kudos to you because, yeah, you did experience a bit of a roller coaster last year, didn't you? Really, to say, but look, you've not stayed in the trenches and you've not started to get down and go into the deeper side of it. You've actually come out of that other side very quickly, like I think you should do, really. And you're actually thriving right now. You know, you're doing great. You're running.
I am running away from my problems now. You know what? It's the power of podcasting. I often hear various little golden nuggets or snippets in my ear that my guests have said to me over the last couple of years, and that has definitely helped me get through my own sort of traumas, if you like. And one of my guests, Kerry Katona, she said something that stuck with me. She's like, "You can kick me down," and my God, has that woman been kicked down? She says, "But you will never keep me down." And I really resonated with that. You know, sometimes things happen in our life that are out with our control. Sometimes, you know, we're responsible, but regardless, we're faced with two choices. You either stay down or you get back up. And I am a great believer, and I know you've got a very similar mindset. It's not just about getting back up as the same person. Otherwise, that's a wasted opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, you learn so much more about yourself in the trenches than you do in the mountaintops, and that's that reality. But so many people, and I understand why, they stay down when they're kicked down because the thought of getting back up and rebuilding and facing potentially a load of rejection again, it's just, yeah, it's too much. But whilst I wouldn't wish the last 12 months on my worst enemy, I definitely feel a better person because of it. I feel a stronger person because of it. I'm a damn sight more knowledgeable than I was because of it. And the whole purpose of my own podcast, of the On a Mission podcast, I always end by asking my guests, you know, what is your mission? And somebody asked me recently, Ellie, what is your mission? And that's not really changed. It's to learn as a person, it's to grow, and ultimately it's to share those experiences with my audience. And I've had more personal growth and business growth in the last 12 months than I've had in any other point in my career. So Dr. John, again, I'm quoting another podcast guest, but Dr. John DeMartini always says every downside has an upside and every upside has a downside. And as painful as the lessons have been, there has been a lot of upsides, and ultimately we're not defined by our failures. I think it's Winston Churchill who said that the definition of success is stumbling from one failure to the next without any loss of enthusiasm. Yeah. So yeah, again, really resonated with that one.
So this might be slightly too early to ask this question.
Oh, go on.
Right. But it's not that bad. I'm not going there yet. But yeah, it might be slightly too early to ask it. But is there a part of you now that is actually really grateful for what you've been through?
Yes and no. And I'll tell you why I say that. On a personal level, yes. Again, it's not been a very pleasant process. But ultimately, it was the right decision for me to end my marriage. And if it wasn't through such extreme circumstances, that probably wouldn't have happened, just because of my own sort of misguided loyalty to the family unit. I recognise a lot of unhappiness in my life. And again, it probably sounds a bit cheesy, but good is the enemy of great. And I think whilst I was in that vibration, I could only have ever achieved a certain amount. So for that, I am grateful, because when you identify that no one's coming to save you, and ultimately I've got a lot of amazing people around me that have supported me, people like yourself that have made my comeback possible. I couldn't have done it alone. Ultimately, you wake up on your own, you go to bed on your own. It's me that's got to kind of take that action. And sometimes it's that necessity's the, what do they say, it's the mother of all evil. You know, it's quite difficult to necessarily motivate yourself to that extreme unless you really have to. But the reason I also said no to that is because it wasn't just me who was affected. So I feel like it would be a little bit disrespectful to the other people that have been involved and financially ruined by the liquidation of the company to say, oh yeah, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. You know, ultimately my dad lost his life savings and a lot of other people lost money with the feelings of that business. And, you know, I'm truly sorry about that. You know, absolutely breaks my heart. But on a personal level, I feel stronger and wiser
Yeah.
because of that. And you know, as I said, I've never felt so capable in my ability to earn money and and to rectify the wrongs of my business partner at the end of the day.
It's a fair answer, that. You know, I remember going through, you know, a turbulent time myself, and it's very easy to stick on that victim T-shirt, isn't it? And I played a victim there, and then the question is, how long does that continue? Whereas in actual fact, when you think about it, and you're proving this right now, so kudos to you for this, the person who got in the great situation in the first place is actually you. So although there was a sledgehammer that came and, you know, knocked a bit of a perch off there, it's actually the same person plus more experience, more resilience, and more strength and willpower that will actually get you back and much higher the second time around.
Yeah.
So I think that message really is just sort of like, don't matter how many times, and you said about this with Kerry Katona, don't matter how many times you're going to get knocked down, and that's probably inevitable. It's how you get back up, dust yourself off, and continue sprinting. That's actually what really counts in that individual, isn't it, really?
Rocky Balboa, it's not about how many times you get hit, it's about how many times you get back up.
Boom.
He was a wise man.
Would you like to interview? In fact, no, I'm not going to ask you if you'd like to interview Rocky Balboa, because technically it don't exist, does it?
Don't say that.
But Sly does.
Sly.
And he's just as better. So who would actually be, if you had one opportunity to sort of say, the ultimate one person who I really want to get
Just
on a mission in 2025, who's it going to be?
Elon Musk.
Wait, I shouted that. There was zero hesitation there.
Yeah, be Elon.
Elon Musk. Elon Musk, if you're watching, let's get in touch.
The reason I said that, there's a few people on my list, but I think that they're a lot more achievable than Elon. I'd imagine that Elon's pretty hard to get over.
Well, he's very relevant in the UK right now, isn't he?
Oh, he is, yeah. He's wading right in.
I mean, we're not going to go into politics. We're staying completely miles from that. But he's having a big interaction right now in the UK. So I think his name is definitely a buzzword in the UK right now. Wow, Elon Musk.
Joe Rogan as well.
You see, there's a
if you say anything about Joe, we're going to fall out.
No, I just can't. From my perspective, where does he go? Joe Rogan. You're going to have to fly out to him.
That's fine. I'm down with that.
What about a tour of the States then?
Is that your biggest thing? You'll have to get on a plane. Like, what? I don't think Elon Musk's coming to Donny either, Ryan, just for clarity.
Well, no, but I think also, how much do you value yourself? Because you're not exactly new to this game. You're actually you're on that level, Ellie.
Oh, yeah, I'm just on par with Elon. Well, just the same.
But, you know, what I'm sort of getting at is, at what point, what's the turning point from you go to everyone else to actually they give you that mutual respect back and come to you?
Probably another, like, 30 million subscribers per episode.
Come on, subscribe, share.
Please. On a Mission 2.0, please help me get Elon. Let's start a Just Giving page for my flight over there.
I'm just about to say, we are just giving, yeah. Flight to Texas, let's get straight out.
I'll just go and sit outside their HQ.
What would it take for that interview to happen? Would you sacrifice the marathon that you've signed up for to go and sit outside his HQ?
Yeah.
Would you really?
Yeah.
Well, you could still run out there and just do a different marathon states.
I'll do laps of Tesla.
Imagine. And then what you're doing, I'll get my interview one day. Elon's going, is it SpaceX, Ellie?
Shit, in the wrong building.
Right, okay, so I'm going to take you back a little bit.
Okay.
We're going to go to some deep, dark moments that you had to experience.
Oh, great. I need to stop laughing then.
What were you feeling in your worst moments
You know.
after you'd just been through that?
Make me laugh and then go straight in for it.
Go straight
Tell me
in.
about your darkest hour. Okay, so you know what's interesting? Are you talking about in the last 12 months here?
Yeah, definitely. That's 12 months.
So you know what's really interesting? I've spoken publicly over the years about mental health. I had over 8 years when I was on all sorts of hardcore medication for depression, for anxiety. That victim mentality that we're talking about, that was me. The world owed me a living. I was a victim. I couldn't wait to tell you about all the people who had wronged me or the bad experiences in my life. I definitely lived in that energy. I don't know whether you want to class it as postnatal depression or just the hormones and the sleep deprivation, which added to pre-existing depression because I was already on medication for it. But went through quite a lot of darkness over quite a prolonged period of time. And I think the crescendo, if you like, was 2018. I went to go and see Grant Cardone at like an in-person event. I'd never really been to anything like that, a self-development event where like motivational speakers and things. And he was talking about Big Pharma, and he was talking about the negative impact that certain medications can have on you. Now, whatever he said, I can't really remember, but it really landed with me. And I remember leaving that event fully pumped up, feeling like I could conquer the world, made the decision to come off the medication and basically chucked everything in the bin. And it was the most stupid thing I could have ever done. Not to come off the medication, but the manner in which I did it. I was just like, fuck this, I don't need this shit. Literally straight in the bin. Now, I was on really, really, really heavy doses. And the outcome of that ended up being feeling, without a word of exaggeration, fully suicidal. Like, fully suicidal. Couldn't get out of bed. Really struggled to even get up and do a simple task like brushing my teeth. And again, I've spoken about this before because I think that it might help people who have never experienced these thoughts or emotions to understand, because I used to always think of people who took their own lives as selfish, particularly if they were parents. I just thought that as a parent, you should always put your children first, and it's as simple as that. But having then experienced that darkness myself, all I can say is that you truly, genuinely believe in those moments that your children or your family or your loved ones would be better off without you, because you see yourself as some sort of dark, infectious energy that's just infiltrating people and bringing them down. And you sort of are aware that there will be an initial sadness when people find out you've died, but you reconcile that by the belief that in the long term, these people, these family members, these loved ones will be better off without you. So anyway, I've experienced that level of darkness before, and getting out of that was a process. It's not just a case of you put on I was going to say a Tony Robbins CD. Like, who the fuck has CDs? You put on a Tony Robbins audiobook or whatever, and then you're skipping out of bed. It takes time and it takes work. But that was probably early 2019. And since then, I've lived and breathed self-development, to varying degrees. And I'm certainly no guru by any stretch of the imagination. But from 2020, I've launched the podcast. I've had the privilege of interviewing like some of the people that we just spoke about, like
Yeah.
Dr. John DeMartini, some of the best thought leaders, authors, people who've been at the brink of suicide, people that have went bankrupt on multiple occasions and now they're multimillionaires, people that have been sex trafficked and now they're dedicating their life to highlighting important topics. And these stories, these learnings, these golden nuggets, it's really gone beneath the surface with me. So as much, to answer your question in a very long-winded way as I do, to answer your question, yeah, this last 12 months has been dark. And I mean, I've had some really dark times, but never ever to that extent. Like when I found the news, and just to give a little bit of context to the listeners, because a lot of them won't be familiar with my story. If anyone wants more information, by the way, on my podcast on the Mission 2.0, it's the first, it's episode number 1 where I really lean into this. But I got a phone call at the end of January 2024, from my soon-to-be ex-husband, basically telling me that everything had gone. There had been a few red flags, shall we say, in the months prior to that, but this completely blindsided me. He told me not only did we not have any money, we owed millions of pounds. We had charges on properties on the family home that I wasn't aware of. We were behind with everything: gas, electric, council tax. House was getting repossessed. The car was getting repossessed. We had to pull our daughter. Well, she was in, she was in the same class as your son. Pulled out a private school. It was absolutely horrific. And when I got that news, when you experience, and it is trauma like that, it shakes you to your core. And I don't want to insinuate that I just handled that level of pressure, because I didn't. I was having heart palpitations. I didn't sleep. I didn't sleep for days. And when I say I didn't sleep, I mean not one wink of sleep. I had a tic. I was convulsing. I wasn't eating. I was in a real sorry state, as I think most people would be that have just had a sort of shock like that. Your cortisol levels are through the roof, your adrenal glands, like everything's totally fucked.
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, emotionally. It was just, it was a complete blur. But you don't really have much of a choice in that situation. Like, we had no food. So it's that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You as a parent, straight away, all I was thinking is, I need to feed my kids. I need to get a level of protection here. I knew the house was going. I'm like, I need to sort a rental. Okay, my car's getting repossessed. Well, how do I get a car? Right, shit, I'm going to need to sell things. So I'm just selling all my worldly possessions. You cannot just sit and be idle when you're dealing with all these different things, taking immediate action, speaking to liquidators, speaking to solicitors, speaking to investors, all on top of having to sit down with my dad and explain to him that his life savings are gone. And it was pretty relentless. This was at the end of January. It was absolutely horrific, but we don't know what we're capable of until we're faced with that level of adversity. And I'd always kind of knew I'm quite good in a crisis. And it turns out I am. Like, I've interviewed quite a few of the SBS guys, from SES Who Dares Wins. And the more I sort of listened to their stories, the more like I could resonate with certain aspects of it, because I've been in so many situations in the past where other people are losing their shit. Like, when the shit hits the fan, all these fucking mindset gurus and things. I see behind the curtain, and so many of them, and under a little bit of pressure, they're crumbling. I'm like, you've inspired me with your book, and then I'm watching you in real life being a total melt. Do you know what I mean? So when faced with that level of adversity, I know I can face things head on, take action, and then ultimately, I suppose not just get back to where I was. That's definitely a wasted opportunity for me. It's about taking things to a completely different stratosphere. And one of the saving graces, again bringing it back to podcasts, so I was a director of the property development company, and obviously as a director we have fiscal responsibility, so I'm not trying to say that I've not got any responsibility to play in that. There's lots of lies told, a lot of things I can't talk about, but ultimately I'm a director, so there's definitely
The buck stops you, unfortunately. That's how us
That's
as business
the
owners,
reality.
we understand that. And as directors, that's the role we play.
That's the role we play. You know, I took plenty of credit in the good times, so I have to take the shit in the bad times, and unfortunately, that's just the way of business. However, what I will say is the business I was operational in, giving my full-time 100% dedication and energy to, was my podcast, and it was my brand, and that was absolutely flying. Now, very stupidly, I didn't separate that from the property business. I did try on multiple occasions. I now know why my ex-business partner didn't separate those, because the revenue I was bringing in, unbeknownst to me, was propping up that business. So what that basically meant was that I had to take my podcast down. It was a bit ironic, really. We were just about to go live with a Stephen Bartlett interview. The podcast had just got to #1 in the UK charts for the first time.
Yeah.
We were really riding a massive wave. I was due to go to Dubai in 2 days. I had meetings lined up.
Oh.
Yeah, for sponsors, for brand affiliations. I was in the process of arranging retreats. I was doing my online events. We were doing in-person events.
You were flying.
Yeah, things were going really well. So overnight, that kind of switched off. I'm off social media. Podcast pulled out. I tried to keep limping on with the podcast, but then it became apparent that, you know, the liquidators were going to try and come after that as well as an asset of the business. And I just thought, you know what, let's just... And to be honest, I didn't want anything that was associated with that business anyway. It was really bad energy. But nobody can take me away.
Yeah.
You know, ultimately, although I've got a very small social media presence now, comparatively, I'm not on YouTube, I'm not on LinkedIn, I'm not on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, which was my worst performing podcast and platform. And the only reason, in all honesty, that I kept Instagram was because I had some cool people following me, and I thought it would have been a real shame to kind of...
Yeah, lose that as well.
Yeah, to lose that kind of opportunity. But ultimately, it's my personal brand and it's my podcast, which is the thing that's carrying me through this, and hadn't lost my commercial value. That became quite apparent when I did lick my wounds, regroup and reappear, and actually being open and honest and transparent about what's happened has arguably endeared more people. Well, no, not really. It's more like if you watch Game of Thrones.
I'm not sorry for you Game of Thrones fans.
That's terrible. Like Cersei, she walks down the street at one point, and everyone's chanting "shame, shame," and she's naked, and everyone's like chucking raw vegetables and stuff at her. It kind of felt like doing that. So when I did my relaunch episode with Tony at the studio, it was quite funny. So she drove to Liverpool. Tony's like one of my best friends. She's amazing. She was with me when I got the call in London, which I'll not go into. If people want to know more, they can listen to the podcast episode. But she thought I was off my fucking head because my house was literally about 1.5 miles from here, and I kept taking her the wrong way. And then we ended up the other side of Doncaster, and she's like, "Do you not even know where the studio is?" But I just had such anxiety about coming in and doing this, and it was obviously like, for me, you're sharing such you're talking about your failures. You know, you're talking about...
It's raw as well at the time you did it. I mean...
It's very raw.
You were coming out of it, but I'm going to ask you a question that might... I know you know the answer. But given what you've been through, honestly now, was there any thoughts whatsoever of being suicidal?
No, that's what I'm saying. My mindset was way too strong. Way too strong.
See, what you went through as business owners... Not many business owners will experience what you experienced. And it's quite a traumatic experience. But like I say, fortunately, you have had a lot of personal development. You know, your mind it's rock solid. You know, what you've been through, the resilience that you've built up, it's incredible. But if you've not experienced it, you'll never know the thought process behind your world completely collapsing. And you can't take that phrase too lightly, because world collapsing, it may as well have been world collapsing of what you experienced, because the house, the car, they're the materialistic things. But when you've got your kids staring in your face and you can't feed them, and like you say, you go into survival mode, that fight or flight, right, don't panic. But right now, the priority is look after the kids, knowing everything else is going. That takes a lot of self-control.
Well, when you're looking at your 70-year-old father who's giving you every penny he's got, living in a house that he's got a lifetime tenancy in that you know is about to get repossessed, I mean, that's pretty brutal. And I think one of the things, if I'm being honest, that I've found hardest, although it's a very small amount of people in the grand scheme of things who invested in that business. I mean, it's a tale of two halves. I've got some of the investors in that business now that I've had absolutely no communication with whatsoever. Never heard of them. I wasn't aware that they were investors. But I need to accept that because of my brand, because of my reputation, which was impeccable, that's built trust. And by default, I've been responsible for them potentially making that decision to invest and ultimately losing their money. I've had some of the investors that have been so supportive, like literally sending me Christmas presents for the kids, sending me Christmas hampers. They send me motivational WhatsApp messages, empowering messages, telling me if anyone can get through it, I can, because they know I'm a good person and that I had no involvement in terms of anything that went wrong.
We are people first, aren't we? Let's be real.
We are, but what I was going to say is, unfortunately, that's the minority.
Yeah.
Out of, say, the 10 investors. What I found really hard is that there is certain people that think that I am the scum of the earth.
It's inevitable, all right? You're never going to please everybody, and people value things differently, and money is one of them. You know, to value money over health, it's a bit wrong, really, when you think what you've been through. If it wasn't traumatic enough, somebody weaker could have, done things differently.
You do have to wonder what people want, like other than the money back, obviously, but when people are doing the things that they're doing to bring you down, to attack you, and you're talking campaigns here, you think, well, what would be the optimal situation here? Are you pushing for me to make an irreversible decision?
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, I want to say this, right? And I'll caveat this with, you've got to be very careful how this is received. But when you invest, there is an element of risk. It's that simple. So it starts with high risk, medium risk, and low risk. But when you make that decision to invest, your money is not necessarily safe. It is still at risk, and you need to know that. So answering your question, yes, someone's lost money. What do they actually want in return? Knowing it's all gone, at what point do they look at themselves as well? Because, yeah, there is a portion of blame, of course. They've put it there and it's probably been mishandled. Be it your fault or not, unfortunately, director, you take responsibility, and that's quite respectful of you there. But it's a tough bit of pill to swallow, that, as an investor.
Yeah, especially when I had no clue about 80% of the investment in the business, because I've been lied to.
What's respectful is that you've faced it head on. You know, you've gone straight into lion's den there, hands up. Hey, what can we do about this? You know, you're not being rational. I know you've tried to, overcome this in the best positive way physically possible to you. But yeah, what do people actually want? You've suffered. I know you've suffered. And,
people don't like to see me bouncing back. They find that disrespectful.
But it's wrong, because it's like I said earlier, the person who you were before, able to make those opportunities, the person who you were investable, from the start. How's about they turn the focus and say, hey, that was a rainy day. Don't forget me. I know that's washed. But tomorrow, what can we do in order for that to be replaced?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if someone came to me with that approach, I'd be more than likely to give blood, sweat, toil
Well,
to get that back.
Actually, and I have had that conversation with some of the investors, and I tell you what, those conversations of what have got me out of bed on my darkest days, when I've lost all self-belief, all self-confidence, because of course something like this does shake you to the core.
Yeah.
And yes, I've came out of the year feeling more empowered, but that's not a daily reality. You still have those like moments of doubt, and certainly last year there was times where I really wanted to give up, but it was the investors who kept the belief in me, and they were sending me these motivational messages that no, I can come back from it. I
Yeah.
thought, you know what, if I can't do it for myself, I'll do it for you.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that, because not only have you got your kids looking up at you, and they're going to form an opinion of you, like it or not, the way of what they see. They'll love you till, the end of the earth. But the reality is they will form an opinion from what they see.
Mm-hmm.
And, although love's, conditional and whatnot, but I think really they'll be judging you from what you do every day. And the fact that you can go through that experience, be loving and caring, that's what matters to them the most. Everything else is just stuff, isn't it?
It is.
So the fact that you can actually be honourable to those investors, look, the experience happened, right? Be it positive or negative, it was always going to be received negatively. But the ones who have reacted positively, you'll be more likely to help them. However long it takes, it might take a decade or whatever, but however long it takes, whatever you can do, if it's brand association, if it's helped them in terms of however it may well be for business, however that may well look. You've always got that positive intent there.
Mm-hmm.
But acting negatively in that situation, you'd have been better off having a bit of a whiffle, going, right, you did wrong, an hour's of dressing down, I'm furious, I need to have a bit of a rage, and then go, look, it's done now, we can't change it. We're now going to have to work through this because I'm out of pocket XYZ, these guys are out of pocket XYZ. What are we going to do as a collective to get this replaced? Can we use the power of you? Get yourself dusted off and let's get you back at this. Because you're doing it anyway in 2.0. So instead of acting negatively to you, wouldn't it have been better off acting more positively?
Oh, honestly, I mean, talk about a pecking order. You've literally had, you've had investors messaging my podcast guests, telling them I'm a criminal, telling them I'm a scammer, which is complete defamation to the point I've had to get solicitors and the police involved. You just cannot make unsubstantiated claims.
Do you know what blows my mind? The event happened, be it could have been prevented or whatever, right? But the event happened. It's the reaction to that event what dictates the outcome. And the reality is, if you've got, I suppose this comes down to be careful who you get into bed with.
Mm-hmm.
Because somebody needs to be prepared for a rainy day if you're going to be invested in money, invested in property or be invested in whatever. If you're going to be physically investing, invest it knowing that you could lose it. But never lose that in a good person. If it's gone, it's gone. If you can't afford to invest it, don't invest it. It's that simple. And it's not nice to say, because I don't mean it in that context, but the reality is, yes, that bad day happened. But it's what you do next. And those good investors that have been great to you, I'm pretty sure they'll be on your favourites list in your phone.
Of course they are.
And that day will come inevitably where it goes, that was a rainy day, but thank you, and it's paid back.
I think it's fairly evident to anyone with a brain cell that I'm coming back from this bigger and better. And whilst I take full responsibility for my fiscal obligations, I feel like, being made homeless and everything else that's happened to me has very much been a direct consequence of that. I have to say there's only so much shit that I'm willing to take for something that had absolutely no involvement. These are conversations that I had no involvement in. These are contracts that I had no part of.
Yeah.
These are projects that I had no association with whatsoever. And, I think it's a fine line between taking responsibility and also not being a punching bag for something that you didn't play a
That's
part
not going
in.
to solve anything. You're right. Look, you took responsibility. You go, hey, hands are up. Okay, this is what I did wrong. This is what I can do moving forward.
Yeah.
And if you're part of this journey moving forward, we'll launch again and we'll do this. And it might take me 5 to 10 years, but I'm dedicated.
Yeah.
It's like, make the decision and fast and then move. It's great to see you back in 2.0 and flourishing. That's from my perspective. I did see you go through those tough times and it weren't nice, but I think we'd exchanged a couple of messages as well and saying, look, you've got this, because from my perspective, you are better when you're at your best. And I know that's probably an obvious one, but it was too easy to just go down in dumps and whatnot from what you've experienced. Look, we're going to go way back.
Oh, God.
What were you like as a little girl?
I was a little shit. Well, what age? I was pretty sweet up until about 13.
Well, girls are though, right? Because it's like...
No, was I? I don't know. You might get a different answer if you ask my dad. I think I'm like really
We should
angelic.
have had him say that.
As a teenager, nah, not great.
Was you a troublemaker?
Yeah.
What were you like with the boys?
Mhm.
Were you all for the girls, or were you keeping the
girls'
boys on the toes?
No, so you know what? In all honesty, my teenage years were, they weren't probably my finest hours. From being about age 14 in Scotland, the culture was just to get absolutely shit-faced. We used to be drinking our MD 2020 and our White Lightning cider that's never seen an
Listen,
apple.
you can't just bring Scotland. This happened all over. This is teenage years.
Well, this is just your the bus stops and all of that. I was like 14, going out with 19-year-old guys.
Yeah.
And to be fair, my parents were actually going bankrupt at the time. They were getting divorced. So there's a bit of a pattern here. My dad, he was experiencing like pretty much suicidal tendencies, suicidal thoughts at that point. He was really struggling with the stress of it all. My mum had a complete mental breakdown. My sister got diagnosed with bipolar. She's got her hair chopped off, rocking in a wardrobe. So there was quite a lot of stress going on. They had to sell the nice big house and the cars and all that as well. Mum moved into like an ex-council house. My dad moved into this tiny little masonette. So we had a bit of a lifestyle change from the 5-star luxury holidays to the bankruptcy, which ironically I remember talking to my business coach about several years ago as being my biggest fear. So I think there's definitely something to all that, you know, to sort of unpack it. But yeah, I was I don't know if that was just my coping mechanism, really, just blocking out with reality. It was a really, really stressful time. But yeah, I used to just go out, get really drunk and make really questionable decisions, basically.
So I don't know if you can remember then, what did you imagine life looking like as a bit of a 14, 15-year-old young rebel? I mean, we all did it at that age, but did you have any aspirations to be an entrepreneur?
No, an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
God, I don't think I knew what I meant till I was about 35. Every fucking window cleaner is an entrepreneur, aren't they? Everyone's.
It's thrown about today.
Every
The best one is when you see someone on social media and they've got a CEO in a title, and you're like, you run one business and you're the director.
You got an Avon round, mate.
You are not a CEO. You've got one director, and all of a sudden you've got a
serial entrepreneur, because I do Kleenex and Avon. No, to be honest, I didn't really have any aspirations. So I wanted to be a war correspondent, which I think was because my parents identified I'd be quite good at talking from an early age, which is weird how it's kind of came full circle with the journalism angle. I remember looking up to people like Kate Adie at the time. She was a war correspondent, and that was something that really appealed to me. So I went...
That's not your normal firefighter, nurse, doctor.
No, but I mean, I've never been particularly normal. I went to college to do journalism. But again, I thought I would just be at the front line reporting. And actually, it was like you got 2 hours of shorthand followed by 2 hours of law. And I was just like, this is shit. So I ended up going full time at Burger King. I was just like,
great trade off.
It was too much like hard work. So the family were, you know, they were in like meltdown mode. You're not going to amount to anything. And I'm hanging around with, you know, some shady folk at the time. People are ODing, dying of drug overdoses. I'm dropping out of college to go and smoke weed at the local drug dealer's house. So I kind of felt like I was on a bit of a steep decline. And then it was really random. One day at Burger King, and they were feeding my broiler steamer. Fucking loved that job. Best job I've ever had. And anyway, I was doing the tills for a bit, and this girl I knew from school came in. I said, "Oh, yeah, Gemma. I remember her name." And I said, "What are you doing here?" She said, "I'm working around the corner at this place, Zenith Windows." It's like cold calling. It's telesales. I'm like, "You get paid to talk?" I was like, "What?
Get me in
what
college.
is this?" And it was an extra 40p an hour. I think I'd been on £3.60 an hour, and she's like, "It's £4 an hour plus you get bonuses on top." So I was like, she said, they're recruiting now. So I walked around in my lunchtime and got an interview and got the job straight away. So I sat Burger King off.
Gone.
Yeah, gone. And it was funny. So I started working there, and then one day I was there for a few weeks, doing really well, loved it. they pulled me into the manager's office, and I'm thinking, shit, what have I done? Because I was always like talking a lot and stuff, which obviously you meant to do to a
It's the
degree,
job.
but not necessarily
phone.
to the people that I was meant to be talking to. So I'm thinking, oh shit, I'm going to get sacked here. And there was a big glass window going from like the sales manager's office so they could see into the telesales room. So he said, Ellie, let's go and sit there. I was like, right, okay, sat. Regional manager goes into the room. I can hear him stood there talking to room full of people, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. Next thing you know, everyone's getting their coats and their bags and all of that, and they fucked off out. And he just came back and didn't say anything to me, and he was like, right, you can go back in now and finish your shift. He basically sacked everyone, including the manager and the assistant manager, apart from me, and I went back and sort of finished the shift. So I was like, wow, okay. So that was quite kind of brutal. But anyway, I can't remember why, but I ended up leaving there. I decided I was going to go and do something else. And a couple of months later, I was looking for a job again. So I rang this Falkirk branch, but it shut down. So they diverted me to Edinburgh. So anyway, started at this Edinburgh branch. Long story short, within 6 weeks, I've been promoted to assistant manager, which meant I run the Sunday shift. And just through, I would say, good luck, but it was bad luck for the manager. His son was in a hospital and he was basically full-time camped at the hospital, which meant that instantaneously from getting the assistant manager's job, I was acting manager and I smashed all his records. So when he came back, they made him my assistant.
Oh, wow.
So it was nuts. I was 17 and I was earning more money than I knew what to do with. I was earning over $1,000 a week at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, which...
That's a lot back then.
Back then...
I know we're not that old, but like...
Well, we are really. If you think it was like $3.60 basic wage, and I was getting more than $1,000 a week. It was... Honestly, I've never eaten so many takeaways. I must have ballooned. I put on about 2 stone. There was none of this health as well.
So did the social life change then, given the new breed of wealth, I suppose? Yeah,
it was like, well, no, because you worked stupid hours. So it was like Wolf of Wall Street. So I'd be there from 9 in the morning to 9 at night, and then we'd go to the pub every single night, me and the team. I'd work Saturdays, I'd work one Sunday a month. So my social life, like when you work in sales, it's quite inbred, which is why you always end up, going out with either your staff or your bosses or your colleagues or whoever
Christmas
else.
Parties.
Yeah. So it was very much a work hard to play hard mentality. When I saw Wolf of Wall Street, actually, minus the coke and the strippers, I was like, that's kind of like what it was.
That's how it happens.
Yeah, and it was so much fun. It was really high energy. It was just total carnage, but it wasn't really a sustainable career. But it was great, and ultimately that's why I moved to Doncaster as well. It was through working. Company. So they got they basically shut down, and we all got taken on by this other company, but it was similar. It was another double glazing company. And again, similar thing happened. There was 4 branches in Scotland. They shut the other 3 branches down. I had the only branch. So they made me technically the regional manager, but I wasn't. It was just me in the same office I'd always kind of been at. And we were really successful. There was like, say, 200 branches across the UK. We were always in the top 10. But my regional manager was just a horrible, horrible man. And every Tuesday we'd go into meetings. I used to always win the champagne and stuff. And he used to just ridicule me, belittle me. He clearly thought that the success had nothing to do with me. It was because of the top salespeople within my team, and it was just like a coincidence that I happened to manage it. And this one particular day, he was just so rude. I rang my divisional manager and just said, Val, I'm done. He's an absolute dick. I can't work with him. I'm quit. And she said, well, what about if we make you regional manager? Would you be up for moving to Yorkshire? She says, regional manager, she said, we've been looking for a manager for a while there. She says, Doncaster managers just quit. If you could go there in the short term, manage Doncaster whilst recruiting for another manager, she said, the regional job's yours. You can have Yorkshire. So I gave her a decision there and then on the phone.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I said, let's do it. And
how old are you then?
19. Yeah.
Wow, 19, regional manager.
Yeah, moved 10 days later, packed up.
That's a big shift.
Yeah.
Parents, what were that thought process like? So obviously, going through a divorce.
I didn't care, I'll be honest. I was quite independent. I moved out at 17.
Yeah.
Quite a sort of.
So it was literally
volatile upbringing.
Bags in
really.
hand.
Yeah.
Into the car.
Yeah.
One-way ticket.
Yeah.
And Sunny Donny.
Sunny Donny
was the location.
No looking back.
And it's still here today.
I really never thought when I drove to Doncaster for the first time. I mean, I've lived longer in Doncaster than I did in Scotland now. So I mean, I'm 41.
I was going to say that kind of technically makes you English, but really it
I was
doesn't,
born in Blackpool.
because also you are technically English.
Well, is it not your bloodline?
Nah, you're born. It's nah.
Now, what if you're born in an airplane above the Pacific Ocean?
Okay, particularly that does happen, doesn't it? No, but Doncaster's technically
Scottish.
Scottish.
It is, yeah.
However,
Don't you forget it, Sonny Jim.
it can never be. It obviously will always be English, because obviously the grounds that surrounded it. But quite an interesting one, isn't it?
Mm,
So born in Blackpool,
yeah. My dad's English, my mum's Scottish.
raised in Scotland,
Yeah.
and you've lived the longest in
In
England,
Doncaster.
in sunny Donny.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So come on, then, 19,
Yeah.
regional manager. That's quite a big position to be in at age of 19.
Yeah.
You know, it was a bit of a big flex there. What drove that? Was it just the success of receiving the money?
You know what? So I suppose when I was 17, bearing in mind I had years of being a bit of a reprobate, and I didn't do that well with my GCSEs, A levels, or they're what are they called, standard grades and something else, higher in Scotland. I was always really bright. And actually, I'd done quite well in my prelims or my mocks. But
Yeah.
by the time it came to doing the exams, I hid under my bed for some of them. I'd really disengaged. The system just, it wasn't for me. And if you have a look at the subjects, like certain ones, you could just see I'd get like an A in history and an A in English, and then I'd get like an F in maths or an F in science. Like you could see
Just
where my
direct it.
attention,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm like that as an adult, you know, if I'm in, I'm in. If I'm out, I'm out.
Yeah.
I always say that, I need to find that happy medium. But when I was 17 and starting to do well, starting to get the sales, albeit like an outbound telesales, it wasn't the most professional environment. But I found something that I was really good at, and I started getting recognition for. And it was the first time in my life, really, that I felt valued and appreciated. And I started to build confidence. Because up until then, my family basically arranged for me to go and stay at my auntie's house in England, in Harrogate. And they were like, you'll just get like, and I don't mean any disrespect with this, so that you just go and get a job like as a receptionist or as an admin assistant. And nobody really thought I was capable of achieving more than that. So when I started working in a telesales department, they were just like, you're working for like a call centre for double glazing, because it's not exactly like a prestigious career path.
Yeah, high profile job. I get it.
But very, very quickly, when I started earning more than my parents, people started to change their perception. But yeah, I did become quite career orientated. I didn't mind doing the hours. Like I loved what I did. I was really, really passionate about it. I was obsessed with it. And I think when you love what you do and you're good at it.
So how did that, 19 regional manager, how long did that last before you pivoted?
Oh, so I left the double glazing industry when I was maybe 21, 22. Yeah, I met Mark, my soon-to-be ex-husband, when I just turned 22, and I was still in the role then. But yeah, I started to get a little bit disillusioned with it. As I was starting to get older and starting to think, oh, I might want a mortgage within the next couple of years.
Yeah.
It wasn't really an industry I wanted to stay in long term. Like you'd hear these stories. There was one of the other regional managers who turned up. We used to have like quarterly meetings at these big stately homes and stuff. And I shouldn't laugh, but this regional manager turned up to whatever stately home it was and went into reception like, oh, we're here for the Anglian whatever quarterly meet up. And they're like, oh no, we've not got Anglian booked in. Just checked all the conference rooms. They're like, I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. He's like, shit, it's just like one of the sister hotels. I wrote the address down wrong. Gets in touch with the big ops manager, and he said, oh no, sorry, you're at the ex-managers meeting. Put the phone down on him. And that was the industry. It was just brutal.
Wow.
Yeah. This guy's just driven for hours to go to this stately home.
Wow.
Yeah, so I remember hearing that story. It's sort of funny as it was at the time, because I was a bit of a dick.
Rough.
It made me start thinking like I need something with a bit more stability here.
Better culture.
Better culture, a bit
Yeah.
more sort of professionalism to start building some solid foundations. But I had to take a massive step backwards in terms of earning. I kind of went from like a senior management salary to just a normal job, if you like. I started working with the hardest to help in society, the long-term unemployed, which ultimately then led me to a job working in the prisons. I worked in the prisons for 8 or 9 years, and then I got made redundant whilst I was on maternity leave,
Yeah.
which was actually the best thing that ever happened to me, because that's when I got into this crazy world of entrepreneurship. And again, putting aside the failings of the property business, what I'm truly thankful for is the personal journey that I've been on, which was getting back into mindset, self-development, things that I've been really interested in my later teenage years, because I was doing all the Paul McKenna stuff and the Tony Robbins stuff way before it was cool to do it.
Yeah.
But then I started thinking it was just a load of American happy clappy bullshit. All this mindset stuff's a load of crap. Ironically, I'm taking antidepressant tablets and anti-anxiety tablets whilst I'm having these thoughts. I just thought it was all a load of like sort of woo-woo bullshit.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, isn't it? Because it's very rarely the people that you look up to that are successful that think that mindset and self-development is a load of shit. But yeah, it was an interesting journey. It wasn't until 2018 that I started to get back into that mindset and things that I started to have another like monumental shift.
Wow. It's a very varied sort of like career.
Yeah. And now it's OnlyFans.
Yeah.
That's going to get me out of this situation.
Them feet pics. I mean, what's your opinion now, looking at entrepreneurship? Is it for everyone?
I've never believed it was for everyone. And I stand by that. Is it for me? Yeah, absolutely. I feel that there's never been a time of more opportunity. I think when you've got the ability to connect, I'm not very good at many things. What I am good at is people and relationships. And it's that whole cliche, isn't it? Your network's your net worth. I think when you surround yourself with people that are stratospheres sort of beyond where you are, it just elevates you. But no, I see a lot of people that invest a lot of money. I call them all self-development junkies, and they go from course to course, event to event, mastermind to mastermind, and they don't particularly achieve anything. And I definitely don't think there's any shame in just having a job, or perhaps people not necessarily burning the ships. I am a bit of a burn the ships person, but I don't think that's an approach that's for everyone. I think people should really, if you're looking to go into business, keep your job, but just build up a side hustle. Make sure you can replace your income and maintain your obligations without adding a load of stress and pressure to yourself before making that leap of faith, because a lot of people just jump straight from the oven and the chip fryers.
Yeah, I've seen people view this from both ends at spectrum, right? I've heard the people say, don't you dare arrive a minute earlier than you're paid, and make sure you leave at the minute you're stopped paid, because why should you give your employer more than what they're giving you? It's not a fair trade-off. They'll replace you once you've got... I understand that point. But I believe on the other end of the spectrum is that if you're wanting to get your own business, well, give the current position that you're in 110% and earn that worth. Because what you'll find is you'll probably get the sort of like respect from that boss, or whatever you want to call that leader. They'll teach you, they'll help you in that transition, and you'll have a better perspective of what it looks like when you get in their shoes. Because if you've got a crew around you, a good team, and they all sign in at the same time and shut off at the same time, it's a bit of a weird experience in terms of entrepreneurship, because we don't switch off.
No.
We're through the clock. I know I am anyway, and I love it, absolutely love it. And I respect everybody's, on and off, the clock in, clock out kind of thing. It's there and as a necessity. I think you should be able to, balance that work life and personal life in good synergy. And I think from my perspective, it's a bit more, you'll know who you are. If you're a side hustle is absolutely fine, but don't lose focus on the thing that's protecting you the most, into like if it's your salary, look after that. But your journey, it sounds like you were very dedicated in what you were doing at the time you were doing it. Were you ever distracted by the shiny penny?
Oh, not when I was an employee. No. I lived and breathed it, and I was
Yeah.
earning really good money. I was very passionate about what I did. And actually, at the point of starting my business, I didn't have any distractions either because you probably know this story already. I got made redundant whilst I was on
Yeah.
maternity leave. My maternity leave then ended, and it was only for a brief period, but I was actually on job seekers allowance, not because I was destitute. I mean, we were living a very middle class life. We had a detached house, we had 2 nice cars, a couple of holidays a year, but everyone put the fear of God into me about this. Like, you need to get your stamp paid. You need to make sure you're on the system. And I found it, and again, I don't mean any disrespect by this, but it was such a degrading process. I remember walking into that job centre with my double pram
Yeah.
and sitting there filling out pages and pages of paperwork for 70 quid a week. And it was the most embarrassing thing because as part of the resettlement team in the prisons I used to work with, my job was an advice and guidance counsellor, so coordinator. So we used to help with employment at the end, education courses, upskilling people, all that kind of thing. So we worked hand in hand with the job centre, and this guy that I'd known for years and worked alongside in the prisons was like, "Oh, hey up, Ellie, what are you doing here? I didn't know you were working today." And I'm like, "No, I'm just here filling out my forms." And I remember thinking at the time, like, this is not going to be my reality. Interestingly, I will just say, listen, just a little bit of a tangent. I thought that was my rock bottom moment. And a couple of months ago, with everything that had happened, I had to register myself and the children as homeless.
Yeah.
Okay. It was just a precaution because I managed to find a rental, and then it was just such bad luck. The landlord decided within 6 weeks of us moving in that they were moving back from China, and they actually started court proceedings to kind of get us out. So anyway, long story short, I've registered as homeless whilst actively looking for something else. Which was quite difficult because my credit rating had been absolutely battered by
Yeah.
this point, and the demand is through the roof. And I was sitting there at the council offices, and I'm looking to the left of me, and I'm looking to the right of me, and we've got some very colourful characters at either side. And I just remember thinking about standing on stage in front of about 500-600 people, talking about my opening lines were standing there with my double pram. I felt like shit. And then I paused and everyone was silent. You could have heard a pin drop. And I started off my speech talking about there was no fucking way this was going to be my reality. And then it was all about how we started off with nothing and ended up with this multi-million-pound property portfolio, yada, yada, yada. And I'm sat there registering as homeless, thinking about this time I'm talking on stage, getting a standing ovation for being some sort of like incredible entrepreneurial person. And yeah, I'm registering as homeless, and I just found it so ironic. I was like, "Oh, you thought you had problems then, girl. Now look at you." And it kind of went full circle. But no, to answer your question, I don't necessarily think everyone should be an entrepreneur. And I think there's a big difference between being an entrepreneur and being a business owner. Like
Absolutely.
I'm a very entrepreneurial person, but I don't necessarily want to build a business. Inevitably, I'm going to end up having to have staff at some point.
Yeah.
But I think and that's a skill that can be learned. But I actually think that is the problem that we've got at the moment. And since I've spoke so openly about what's happened to me, so many people have approached me with this and just said, "Ellie, we're in the exact same boat. We're hanging on by a thread," or they're sharing their own different experiences. And this is the common thread. There's a lot of people that are very entrepreneurial, very good at making money, and then go and build businesses without the relevant experience, knowledge, or infrastructure, and they end up growing way, way, way too quickly. As we're encouraged to do in a lot of these courses, by the way, I've got a massive, massive issue with the wealth creation industry.
It's not regulated, is it?
It is not regulated at all. And this is the point I do want to make to people, because I want people to learn from my mistakes. You can go and become a director for whatever it is, 20 quid on Companies House within like about an hour. You're not signing anything. You're not aware of your responsibilities. I didn't know I was meant to be having shareholder meetings, and I knew we paid a top accountancy firm. I didn't think for 1 second that there would be issues with the accounts, because surely as a director this accountancy firm would have notified me. But as we've already said, the buck starts with you. But there is a big difference between being capable of making money and running a business.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely bang on there. Running a business is I don't define that as entrepreneurship. You know, the two completely different personality traits as well for me. You know, people talk about Elon Musk and we talk about like Richard Branson, things like that, and they're the pinnacle. They're the person who we put into the spotlight. But yet the amount of people beneath them who are actually grinding, doing the do, they never get the mention in the spotlight. But they are getting financially remunerated. They're getting looked after, the health packages, the bonuses, the paychecks, you know, the great lifestyle without the bad publicity. So there is something to be said about the difference between an entrepreneur and the businessman or woman. But then equally, be it a C-suite or director suite, a management suite, or they're just the grind, the do as they do. From my perspective, you've got to find who you are, what you're comfortable with, and then give it your absolute everything. It doesn't matter if you're the worker, the management, the director, the C-suite, or the entrepreneur. I think what's in people's core can't be taken for granted. And as long as you're doing the right thing ethically, then it doesn't matter the highs, the lows. Whatever the experience, you can always get back on horse and keep going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give us some pay it forward messages, Ellie. Given your... So we spoke about a bit of trauma in there. We spoke about...
Bit of trauma.
The entrepreneurship we spoke about from your young years coming right the way through.
Mm-hmm. You got my life story, haven't you?
We have actually. We've gone deep, haven't we, there a little bit. What would you, if you had a message to pay forward, you know, to anyone listening to this who's really going to, you know, get inspired by what you've done and how many times you can keep bouncing back?
That's the message. You know, I've had more... This is what I started to say earlier before I went on one of my massive tangents, but I've had more messages from people with the new podcast, my relaunch episode. Now, bearing in mind, I had episodes that went viral with the original podcast.
Oh, yeah, you did.
That were covered in every country, that have received millions of views. And I can genuinely say, hand on heart, I had more messages. Bearing in mind, I'm only on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I don't have that big a following on Instagram. And my download numbers were not particularly high.
And it's just you now, no team.
Just me. Well, I still got Kira.
But yeah.
But yeah, she's
There's
pretty much freelance.
There's no one manning that full platform, is there, anymore?
No, it is just me. I had more direct messages from my relaunch episode than any other episode. And the amount of people that told me and continue to tell me how inspiring I am, it's really overwhelming. It's quite ironic, really, that it takes registering as homeless and going bankrupt to get that kind of level of recognition. You know, it definitely feels misplaced, I'll be honest with you. But I think the fact that I have had the strength, and it did take strength to speak with such candour about such a delicate situation whilst I was going through it, as opposed to getting out the other side, which is what I've done in the past, and which a lot of other people do. We get from A to B, and then we tell people the process. And I used to lean into the emotion and the mental health and everything else, probably a lot more so than other people, but usually from the point of having already learned the lesson. It takes a different level of strength to share with people when you're still very much going through it. But I want people to come on the journey with me, because I think this story, and the reason I'll continue to talk about it, is so much bigger than me. And it's that thing, isn't it? If you're going through hell, there's only one way. And there's so many people that are suffering, that are struggling out there, that are going through their own version of hell. I don't think what I've been through is any more traumatic than, anyone else. Everyone's got a story, and actually I feel like a lot more empathetic and a lot more in tune with other people's struggles. So I feel that my mission is, and will continue to be, to hopefully be a source of inspiration to people, to show them that however futile, however pointless things may seem, I can resonate with that. You know, I lost everything in terms of my commercial value, if you like. There was no social media, there was no podcast, there was no way of generating income. I was in a real...
Scratch, it was starting again, wasn't it?
I was in a real pickle, and it's to show people that you can come back from that. Nothing is permanent, and that again, the energy in which we approach things is ultimately what will define us, because I believe this. I believe very much in frequency. This is about more than just mindset. I think you have to be the energy that you want to attract. And as you said yourself, you've seen me in some pickles, you've seen me at some low moments, and I definitely don't want to shy away from that because that's disingenuous. But ultimately, I don't stay in that energy. It's going back to
Yeah.
the Kerry Katona quote: you can keep me down, but you can't keep me down. And ultimately, if my frequency is not where it should be, I'm not attracting the people or the opportunities that I need to attract in order to rebuild my life and to reclaim my power. And people can watch me doing that in real time, publicly, very visibly. I'm taking I'm definitely not burying my head in the sand. This is extreme ownership. This is the ultimate accountability. Watch me. This is why I'm doing all this crazy shit. This is why I'm signing up for marathons. Is it because I'm super fit? No. Is it because I'm super motivated? No. It's because I'm the entire opposite of that. It's about recognizing my my weaknesses and setting my life up in a way that I'm going to win, because I've publicly said I'm doing this Edinburgh Marathon, so I've got no bloody choice but to do that.
Do you know what's really nice about this? Which this really is the start of On a Mission 2.0 in terms of 2025. And hopefully viewers will appreciate that following your journey is more of a relatable one now, because you are starting the fresh. So people can get on board with this brand new fresh journey that you're on. And yeah, if they stay in tune and obviously follow Ellie on your new journey, you'll see it from start to finish, that you are being real. It's very raw, but yet you will be able to build back up and even stronger. So what you actually had previously, you've not lost. You're just going to reset, change a few things and build back on what you've already had. So the exponential growth, I'm really looking forward to, and being part of that journey. That's going to be really, really exciting. So I want to say thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.